So maybe we can start with a question from me just to get us warmed up, and by all means, please ask questions, comments, compliments, whatever you got. But maybe, I'm so interested in the last couple of years. We had I Am Legion, we have the Pirate Bay film this year, we have your film, and it's become really important to sort of place these internet phenomenon in a historical and political context. And I wonder, was that your intent from the very beginning when you got involved in this project?
Yeah, the very short version is I got involved in this project in 2002. I met Fanning and Parker as Napster was collapsing, and I originally wrote it as a narrative at a studio, and then it went to turn around, and I sort of let it go and came back to it as a doc years later. But my interest in it from the beginning was using Napster as a way into a conversation that was much bigger than file sharing, which it was pretty clear to a lot of us at the time that Napster happened that it was bigger than file sharing, and that it was, you know, one of the first, you know, probably if not the first major, you know, internet service that broke open what has become the open internet that we have today, that everybody's battling about trying to legislate out of existence or close down, or at least hamper our ability to move around freely online. And that was my primary interest.
And maybe, can you tell us a bit about the musicians? I wonder, did you know who you wanted to involve before you got started? Did you know who had, you know, sort of very interesting comments or very extreme sort of positions?
Yeah, I mean, it was important for me to not litter the movie, and I don't mean in a disparaging way towards musicians, but I didn't want to litter the movie with these sort of pop culture celebrities that would just be waxing about downloading. I feel like that was sort of part of my criticism of the way the Napster story was mishandled by the media in the first place, was it became this very shallow, inaccurate kind of, you know, football for the media and for artists and people, and there was very little intelligent discourse around it, and almost no accurate discourse around it. So I was really interested in finding artists, however few they were, at whatever side of the story they were on, that actually cared deeply about the issues, understood technology, cared about technology. I don't care if they hated downloading, provided they knew what they were talking about and had something of interest to say. And so I kept that very limited, so that hopefully within an hour and 45 minutes, people could get a really rich but fairly constrained explanation for what went down, that would then hopefully lead them to go out and research more if they find this subject matter interesting. It's not meant to really be the last word, because there really isn't one, and there's certainly no last word on where the net's going right now. So it's really meant more as a way to, A, clearly explain what happened in Napster, which I felt had never been done, and I think it's a very important moment in cultural history, whatever side of the fence you happen to be on. And then to use that as a conversation starter for people, like, oh, you know, what happened here, what happened there, and to investigate that on your own.
Do we have questions in the audience? Yes?
Sir, I forget his name, the German investor who lost quite a lot of money.
And his job, Thomas Middelhoff.
He seemed so sanguine about the situation, and still spoke very positively about his eyes. And could you just talk a little bit about what he's doing now, or how you found him?
So can you talk a bit about the German investor, how you found him, what's he doing now?
You know, the funny thing about everybody who came in contact with Fanning and Parker, and myself included, was that, and it honestly was across the board, is Hillary Rosen, is this me? Hillary Rosen said this to me when I met her, and Hillary went through hell in a handbasket. I mean, she had a hard time, and again, whatever side you fall with the RIAA, you know, she really also got vilified, right? So, but even when I met Hillary, everybody loved those guys. And it was kind of across the board. They just loved the Napster guys, because it was like once you actually met them, you realized where they were coming from and what their vision was. And, you know, certainly there was a lot of naivete. And again, even if you walked away going, well, I still think downloading is wrong, that really isn't the point. And Middelhoff was one of these people who, you know, met Fanning and Parker, mostly Fanning, because Parker was gone, and understood the scope of the vision that Fanning had, which was really a genius level vision. He's not just like some baseball cap wearing kid who was the first into the space. There was no space. You know, he thought it up on his own, he coded it on his own, and he scaled it with the help of like 4 or 5 other geniuses, all of whom, these guys were like in their teens. They're all running major companies now. These aren't like idiots, right? So the magnitude of talent at Napster is really hard to quantify, but to people like Middlehoff, laymen like myself, people like Hillary, you would see this little company and be like, something major is happening here. And so that's something that Thomas really carried with him, you know, even having gone, I mean, he ended up getting ousted from Bertelsmann over the, I mean, it's a big deal, you know, he was one of the, he's doing fine, you know, but still, it's a lot, it was a very intense, traumatic experience for a lot of these people, but they still sort of look back at that as a really great period for them.
Yep. Over there.
I'm reading Steve Jobs' biography. They talk about the day where he got all the music text in one room, and they were talking about how to develop iTunes. And really, the listener will talk about how they wanted to work. And the final point would have shut up and said, basically, we're going to charge 99 cents or $1.99 for all the songs. It seemed very simplistic. Do you get a sense from Fanning that he pitched a similar idea to them, something very simple like that? And was he also frustrated that Jobs was able to kind of piggyback off of what he did and turn it into something?
Yeah, this is a really good question. You could make a whole movie about this. And the iTunes, the Steve Jobs connection from Napster to the record industry, the question was, you know, Jobs basically pitched a 99-cent model to the labels, and that was the first way that music started getting monetizable digitally. And what did the Napster guys think of that and of the subsequent success that they had? The thing to understand about Napster is the 99-cent model was created by Fanning and Parker. And that was their business model. And that was the model they'd been pitching to the labels for 3 years, over and over and over again. I mean, Parker sort of comments on it in the archival when he's 18 years old, that people are going to need to be able to cherry pick individual tracks. It was really evident to the kids online. It was the kids online that created that business model. And to be fair, it precedes Fanning and Parker. Justin Frankel, who invented Winamp when he was 16, sold it to Microsoft for $300 million in 97, I think, 96. You know, this whole evolution, whether, again, whatever side you fall on it, was developed by kids based on their listening habits. And Jobs took most of the core talent from Napster, literally. I mean, hired them. The main guy who created the music artist management service at Napster and how to market this stuff still runs that in the iTunes store today. It's a guy named Matt Fisher. All of that stuff was basically taking the evolution that was created by the kids, Napster, Winamp, and all of these, and because Jobs was a grown-up, he was able to actually talk to those people and they would take him seriously. However, there's another component to it, which is that David Boies, and I'll make this quick, but it's interesting. David Boies had raised so many antitrust issues in court. He'd actually done a really good job in this area, that the labels were now forced to do business with somebody. They had to do business with somebody. And Jobs, at that time, Apple was not the Apple that we know today. It was a struggling company. He was trying to come back from, you know, complete demise. And they looked at Steve Jobs and they were like, well, this guy's got 4% of the market. Who cares, right? And they made a deal with him, and within 2 years, he had 85% of the entire market for digitized music. So, and we have the iPod, and the iPad, and the iPhone, and the list goes on and on. So it's an interesting story.
It sure is. Yep.
The Napster subscription service was awesome. The replacements it has today, I think, are still inferior to what they came up with. Why did that never fly?
So why did the Napster subscription service never fly? It was great. This man enjoyed it and misses it very much.
You know, the original Napster model, which we all jumped on in '99, was, in the age of dial-up, was very fast. It was chat, real-time chat. It was obviously media sharing. It was massive global community. It was artist discovery. It was curation, because they had all these divisions for different types of music. I was personally more into like old jazz bootlegs, so I stayed in that world, which had, you know, 1 million some odd people over in it. there is nothing like Napster today. There's nothing vaguely like it in today's marketplace. And I think that, you know, it speaks volumes about the level of sort of litigation and hostility and fear around these technologies. And it's easy, it's one of the reasons I want to make the movie, it's easy to sort of look at Napster and go, well, they've, you know, caused the demise of musicians' rights, artists' rights, and all of this. But really, honestly, most of these technologies have been very hamstrung from being able to do have any kind of freedom within the marketplace that would allow them to begin to curate because of all the litigation that's going on. So it's really kind of a shame. I'm hoping that it's temporary, but it's certainly true that we don't. Now we live in the worst of all possible worlds, in my opinion, where the artist isn't compensated, the services aren't that great, and it's kind of a no man's land, and the sound quality is terrible, and you know, it's kind of a shame, but I'm assuming it's temporary. I think he was first.
You have iTunes, which is the monetary business model, but the one executive made the point is that it's free, and you still have the free service, like uTorrent. Is that not the new Napster? And you still have the free business model. Actually, we call it a business model.
Yeah, the question is what, I mean, I'm assuming on a certain level is like what impact these free services are having, even in a monetizable world that we live in. The answer is very controversial. People fall on various sides of the question, how much is free hurting anything? Is piracy even real? Is there even a piracy problem at all? And these aren't questions coming from the Pirate Bay and hackers. New York Times wrote a massive article about this that cited very squarely on the fact that there's no statistics proving that free anything has ever been anything other than massive spiking promotion for those businesses. Pretty controversial. That's the New York Times. Forbes, for instance, they wrote a similar article, cited very similarly. There's actually no data that proves that the free culture has had any negative impact on the sale of anything ever. The piracy that we know causes problems is what we call hard piracy. You go to Thailand and you get Titanic a week before it comes out. That's been around forever. But there's a lot of speculation as to whether there's been an enormous amount of spin on the part of lawyers that the actual problem with the marketplace is that the business models have collapsed. The existing business models haven't embraced the technology and found ways to monetize and market those technologies. And of course, as Don Einer puts very clearly, he made very clearly to me when I met him, he was like, look, to me, Napster didn't sink the record industry, Wall Street did. You know, and that they were heading for an iceberg regardless of the free culture because there was no way to develop artists anymore. Because, you know, the conglomerates took over the record companies and suddenly you didn't get 2 years to break an artist. You got 1/4 of whatever quarter within the year. If they didn't hit, they were done. And that's why Donnie left Sony. So it's an extremely complicated issue, and I don't get into it in too much detail for the simple reason that I think it's almost, you know, it's almost unfair to try to make a proclamation in a doc and walk away. There's so much information out there that you can find if you want to start digging for it in New York Times, in Forbes, whatever. It's important to discover that stuff for yourself, but the level of misinformation is staggering in terms of what we've been led to believe is the problem.
Yeah, as it's something that you just said in the middle of there sort of tied into the question that I had, which is, as an actor and a filmmaker and someone who's been around this, it seems like Napster's changed a lot for all of these various different incestuous entities that sort of go together. The record business and the film industry don't exactly have the same rules, but they go hand in hand a lot. How has this made your job as a filmmaker a little bit harder in wake of the Napster thing? And did people really understand that you weren't necessarily glorifying this, and were you ever really worried about how making a film about Napster would potentially impact any future job opportunities you might have?
So were you ever concerned that tackling Napster would have some sort of effect on your job opportunities and sort of the link between music and film and downloading and piracy? And I did such a bad job encapsulating your interesting question.
Luckily, he was very clear and loud. So, yeah, no.
Yeah, there's a question.
I noticed there was an iPhone on the table when he was talking on the interview. Is that intentional?
So there was an iPhone on a table while you were interviewing Fanning. Was that intentional?
Only because that room was so ugly and that table was so, I mean, Fanning has a wide, that's his iPhone. Like everybody shot in their own environment. And he left it there and I thought, that's the only thing breaking up this shot. It was a really ugly shot and it was like really late at night and he got there really late and, you know, making movies is, you know, like Kubrick says, it's writing War and Peace on a bumper car ride. So we had to go, you know. But there's nothing partisan there. I don't think Sean has any Apple stock. And I know I don't.
No subliminal messages in this film. There's time for one last question. Wait at the back. Yep.
What's your plan for distribution? Will you be releasing DVDs or will you be putting your movie online for out there?
So what's the distribution plan?
I swear I don't plant this guy, but this person is in every Q&A, no matter where I am. We front-loaded digital for our release, so we are going to have a theatrical iTunes VOD release, but we have the biggest part of our release is streaming, and that will be happening. I'm going to be announcing that next week, hopefully, and it's going to be like a really cool streaming deal. So it'll be available basically on all of those platforms.
Thank you so much, Alex. If you guys, I know we missed so many questions. Alex will be outside of the theater to address those. Thank you so much. Please remember to vote, and thank you so much for such an educational and entertaining film.
Hey, thanks for coming out.